Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. As you guys know, we had one of the biggest liquidation events in crypto history taking place over the last couple hours. As the markets opened, Bitcoin saw an absolutely massive sell-off, and we've seen a lot of the altcoins sell off in the process. With that being said, many are also breaking out, showing insane strength, which is usually an indication we still have more upside to come before this move is over. So for today's video, we're going to be breaking it down, explaining exactly what the charts are showing us, analyzing each and every index that we have in crypto so that we know exactly how to be positioned, how to be prepared, and how to capitalize on any volatility that may happen ahead. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, here we are to take a look at Bitcoin, and as you guys can see right off the bat, we have had one of the bigger sell-offs, and this is really the first sell-off that we've had for quite a while. We've been just more or less consolidating in this exact same range, which is why I wanted to bring back pretty much the same analysis that we've been keeping for a long time now. And what we were really talking about was the potential of this breakout. We finally flipped that range high, but as you guys can see, that was a bull trap, and we ended up falling and pretty much having a move all the way back down to the range low as support. So this was a huge liquidation event. This is the type of move where not only do all the shorts get wrecked by the fake breakout, but it's also where all of the longs get wrecked too, because of the fact we had this massive sell-off. So as it stands, we're in the exact same range. Diving into the shorter time frames, we had a short-term bounce after this big move, but it does look like we're kind of rejecting and selling off again down in here. So as far as the shorter time frames go, I think we should just more or less expect volatility. When I look at this price action, to me, I really won't be surprised to get one more lower low, considering this kind of just looks like your standard ABC correction back up. It looks like that's what we did on the upside, and if we're counting Elliott waves, this would be wave 1, this would be probably wave 3 and wave 4, and I do think that we have the potential of one more low coming in. Now the question comes, do we only go back down and kind of retest this base support that we've been at for, the last month or so? Because we haven't really broke below that support, and we haven't really broke out of this resistance. We're still inside of this same horizontal support and resistance range as a whole. But now we've kind of had this big capitulation, and the way it looks is I wouldn't be surprised to see that one final push back down. And from there, because of how severe this wave 3 impulse was, I really am not going to be surprised to see this wave 5 just barely peak above the top. And it'll be more of kind of a capitulation where people are going to think that it's breaking down, considering we would be technically making a lower low right here. But we would be more or less just coming right back into contact with our base support. Trap all of the people that are panic selling in that time, only for the price to maybe start reversing back up. That's kind of what I'm going to be watching for. There's only a couple scenarios that we can play when we're looking at a ranging market, considering the fact that we've only been in between a resistance and a support for the last month. So the fact that we've had this sort of big capitulation, all we really did was Darth Maul and just wreck everybody in one big consolidation. If we come to a weekly, you guys will know it a little bit more what I'm talking about when I say Darth Maul. If you guys watch Star Wars, Darth Maul has that lightsaber where it's got these two, swords on each end and then the handle. That's exactly what I'm talking about. This is the type of pattern that you're going to see whenever you're trading leverage on exchanges in shorter time frames. Really, in the last cycles, you saw a lot of that where the exchanges you were trading on were actually counter trading you. So you'd have these big sort of wicks where everybody, all of the shorts would get wrecked, and then in the same move, all of the longs would get wrecked, and then the price would close right straight in the middle of the range. This is pretty much the same exact example of one of those. The only difference is it's just a bigger example of one of those. We don't normally see these, but it's not anything we haven't, and that's why I think that in the short term, what we have to be at least aware of is the potential that we do come back down and retest this main support level, taking us all the way back for the last couple weeks of my analysis. We're going to be looking at about 40,430 all the way down to, let's just give it an even 40,000 to about 40,500. That's kind of the area of support that we're going to be looking at for the potential of one more low. But if we do see one more low, don't be surprised that that ends up being that final shakeout that kind of traps everybody that starts to capitulate in here. And even if we did make a capitulation that went below the support, I don't really find it likely that this correction is going to last a long time, considering when we look at our other indices being the total market cap, we get a pretty clear understanding of what is taking place. And so far, these are getting closer to breaking down, which tells me we could see a little bit more of a deeper pullback. Considering, like I said, guys, when we're looking in the middle range of Bitcoin, it does look like we could see one final sort of low. Is that going to take us into a lower low, or is that only going to be taking us back down to this support? I'm not 100% sure, but regardless, when we look at the total market cap, I think that this is going to give us an idea relatively soon as to what's happening. And as you guys can see, this has been the main trend line that we've been riding ever since we began this impulse. And in the last little bit, when we sort of had this capitulation, we came right down onto contact of that. But as you guys can see, as Bitcoin has made this little rejection in here, we're also seeing that the total market cap is pretty much rejecting at this trend line, and it's turning into resistance. So does that mean we're about to see one more lower low? I think it definitely could, and that's more or less what I'm seeing inside of the Bitcoin chart, and why I told you guys we're probably going to come back down to at least the support low of this. So if the total market cap is doing that same rejection, but it's taking place right at this trend line, and we're breaking that trend line, then we have to be aware of a deeper pullback that could actually play out. Now, right off the bat, I think the main support, or the first support we're going to be looking at, is pretty much just the level that we were consolidating below before this breakout, and then when we broke out, the level that we consolidated on top of support after, right? Which is going to be 1.487 trillion all the way down to about 1.435 trillion. So as we're breaking down from this, potentially, if we're going to see a lower low, I think that that takes us to here. That's our first main area of support. It could end up being some type of short-term ABC correction, which is pretty standard inside of Elliott wave theory. It would be like this before we end up making that next run up inside of this move, because I still think that we're going to hit this lower high up in here before this is over. I just think that this is the first correction that we're going to be seeing until we get to that final leg. So I don't think anybody should be super worried about it. It's just that we've had such a large move to begin this impulse and virtually no corrections. It's been pretty easy game, higher highs, higher lows, ascending support the whole way up. So to see us kind of breaking down from this support, don't be caught off guard if we do see that lower low like I'm talking about, maybe to here. And at the worst case scenario, if we were to lose that, we're unable to kind of hold that level, it even starts to look more like resistance, then at that point we're going to be looking at a full retest, pretty much taking us all the way back to this prior range. I'd be looking at pretty much 1.3 trillion to about 1.26 trillion. That would be the main support level that we'd be watching for. We're just going to be playing it level to level. Regardless, we had this massive breakout of, however many 500 plus days inside of this bottom formation. So, we're looking at a 500-day range. Even if we have this sell-off and it is a decent pullback coming into the beginning of this year, that would be about 15. I give it 10 to 20% tops. That's kind of what I'd be watching for. Even if we get that type of a pullback, I don't think that we can go wrong by using that as the opportunity to get into positions. And if you're worried about the fact that we could see this lower low and you're in leverage or you're in anything that could potentially see a lot of downside risk, at the end of the day, all you have to do is just de-risk yourself. It's not like you have to overcomplicate things. If you're over leveraged in positions, you're either just going to stay over leveraged and eat the loss on the way down, or you're just going to handle the loss and then look to take into your reserves, because we have been watching for this sort of bullish or bearish divergence. We have known that our momentum indicators were waning for a little while, and now we have successfully made a lower low on the OBV right here. And as you guys can see, we did get some short-term bearish divergence on the OBV as well. So as it stands, we saw a higher high on the price as it made this pullback. The OBV saw a lower low in price. So this in and of itself is bearish divergence right here. And we've already had bearish divergence formed inside of the RSI. So we were kind of been watching for whenever the OBV would line up with the RSI, because the RSI is going to stay overbought or oversold. That's why it's not the best indicator to use by itself. But now that we're getting confirmation happening inside of the OBV and we're starting to lose this trend line, I just think it's likely we could be in store for a deeper pullback on the way back down. First target's a 10% drop, which is this support right here, basically 1.432 trillion. And then if we are unable to hold that support, we'd be looking for another pullback, potentially to 1.26 or 1.3, somewhere in that range. So that's the total market cap. Now let's dive over here into the altcoin total market cap and get a little bit of an idea of what's taking place here, because it's actually holding up better support. We've seen altcoins hold better support as the total market cap in Bitcoin looks a little more bearish and it's breaking down up here on this trend line. The altcoins, technically held that ascending support, and even though they're pulling back right here, we have a little bit of downside to go before we're even retesting that trend line again. So don't be surprised if altcoins fall off, or fall to this trend line, I should say, and then we start bouncing. However, if they are unable to hold this, we reject and then break down from that trend line, similar with what like the total market cap is doing right here, then we got to be aware that downside risk is 100% there, and you don't really want to necessarily be holding like any leverage or holding any like short-term stuff through that, unless you really like have planned to hold it throughout whatever correction. But when we're watching this, we can see that we're still holding this ascending support. So even though the total market cap looks a little bit more bearish, the altcoins are holding support. And technically, with what we're seeing in here, you know, the OBV has pulled back in here. This doesn't really show any bearish divergence or anything. It's the bearish divergence that's inside of the RSI. So as the total market cap has given us a confirmation of a bearish divergence forming on the RSI and the OBV, we're actually looking at the altcoin total market cap not having that significance and confirmation on that OBV, whereas it does on the RSI. So as of now, this is still holding support. If we were to do the same thing and break down and lose that level, I'd be looking for a full retest of this range. And that's more or less just going to be 657 billion up to about 707 billion for the altcoins. It'd just be a short-term breakdown from this support, more or less like what we'd be looking at if we had to draw a conclusion. If we come over here and look at like ETH, looking at its last cycle, considering when it made this sort of double bottom formation and it started breaking out, it did this exact same setup. And that's more or less what I think could be playing out for us from here, you know, going into this next cycle. Even if we have to suffer for the short-term correction in here, I don't think that anybody should be super worried about it, considering the amount of upside that I think will take place once this correction is kind of over. You know, it will make all of this worth it, I promise. It really will. But if we're looking at something like this, guys, right, where we made this big move, we're sort of going to be pulling back down, retesting this. Don't be surprised, because this would be very similar with what we saw to begin that cycle for ETH as it broke out of that 500-day range, that massive, you know, bear market bottom. We flipped it as support. We had that final sort of sell-off right here. Everybody got, you know, faked out. Everybody was like, oh, well, game over. We're not actually breaking out anymore. And then that was right before the whole market took off. So we got to keep into perspective the significance of the breakout we just had. We just broke out of a 500-day range. So even if we see a lower low right here, that's such a big buying opportunity that for me, the only real risk is probably holding like leverage, because holding positions right now are probably more or less just going to end up being big, you know, winners for you as the market breaks out. Because if we're looking at something like this playing out and we're about to start that next cycle running all the way up to, you know, this lower high and maybe even higher, it's hard to say. There's going to be a lot of money coming into the market. And I think that we need to do our parts by being prepared and being positioned and not getting too over worried about these little small minor corrections, considering the whole technical setup, the aspect of crypto, looking at it from a level to level basis, it's never looked better, and we're holding great support right now. Coming into the total market cap, this is going to be the total market cap excluding Ethereum, so this is like even more altcoins, so to speak, and this one's also holding support. When you're looking at the altcoins, they seem to hold the best support throughout this crash, and this one has an even higher level to go until it hits that trend line. So when we're looking at these, don't be surprised if we keep seeing a lot of altcoins running. I mean, I just pulled up the Arbitrum chart a second ago, and that's an example of one of the altcoins that's really just not pulling back at all. We've seen certain altcoins breaking out, actually holding great support throughout this sell-off, and generally when you see altcoins breaking out and showing a lot of strength as we're starting to see Bitcoin making these sort of big capitulations, oftentimes I've seen them end up being more or less just fake outs before we start a new leg higher. And when we're looking at the altcoins, technically they're all holding support. They're not breaking down. We don't have confirmation there. So to see them kind of breaking out, it's either a big warning sign that we're about to see the shift happen, and this is like the blow off top of altcoins as that money's starting to cycle through them. We're starting to see all of these altcoins making their final runs up inside of this move. And if that's the case, you know, don't be surprised if that led us to that short-term correction. But when I look at the chart of Bitcoin, I still personally believe that we're going to be coming up to the top of this lower high. That's been my target. Even if we do see some type of a flush like this, I'm still looking for more along the lines of this before this is over. Our wave count shows that we've got one more impulse coming. The rest of the markets look like they still have one more impulse coming. So that's kind of the way that I'm going to be playing it. Looking at the total market cap indices for confirmation, I think that this is really all we need to look at here, considering if we break down, continue to lose this, we could be in for a lower low. But looking at the big picture, guys, that lower low is nothing to be worried about, considering this would be a great opportunity to be getting in for the long term, doing everything you possibly can to leverage more money into the markets, and, you know, looking to capitalize the majority of the cycle, considering if this is the last retest that we're going to get before new all-time highs, before that much bigger impulse comes in, you're going to be mad at yourself a year or so from this point for not doing it. So I'm just here warning you, me and your future self here are just warning you that it's probably better not to be too overstressed with what's taking place, considering technicals are very bullish right now. So anyways, guys, this is the video I had for you. If you did find value, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these updates. If you guys want to join the Discord server, see how I'm investing, any altcoins that we're making money on, as some of these altcoins are breaking out, we're up like 8x on our Arbitrum longs right now. So if you guys want to see how I'm personally investing, any altcoin positions, any leverage, NFTs, literally anything I do with my money, you guys got to join the Discord server. Links are in the description. From there, you're going to be able to sign up on my website. That's where you get access to my server. So if you guys do want to get access and join and see how I'm investing, links are in the description. Thank you all so much for the support. Hopefully you guys survived this sell-off. And if you've made some money off anything, drop it in the comments what you did. Thank you all so much. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.